Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt. College football's Week 6 already well underway. A few games about to kick off, a few just wrapping up, many more already in the books. Over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to do my best to run you through all the relevant action. Now, as you might notice, kind of a missing man formation here this evening. Dan, my beloved co-host, your beloved co-host, currently down in Austin, Texas, going to watch a big game in his own right. West Virginia traveling to Austin, squaring off against the Longhorns in just a few minutes. He left us a present, which we'll play in just a little bit. In the meantime, in his absence, going to get some help from a number of our good pals all across the SBN network. We'll start off talking about the big one of the evening. Of course, that's where game day was a little earlier today. Lee Corso, well, he picked, I think we have the graphic of this, but Lee Corso picked South Carolina. He scared the crap out of one Kirk Herbstreit. Actually had the live chicken with him. And on the phone lines right now, we have our, I guess that's kind of an awkward transition. I can't call Kyle King our own live chicken, but he is from dawgsports.com. He joins us now on the phone lines to discuss this game a little bit more in depth before it kicks off. Do we have Kyle on the phone?
Hey, good evening. How are you?
Kyle King, how are you? I am doing well. Are you set for this game?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So has anything happened yet? Do we know it? I guess they haven't kicked off quite yet.
Actually, I stepped down the hall so as not to have the TV on in the background. So if it started, I missed it.
All right, so you're doing this the honest way then. We appreciate that. Yeah. I got to ask you, Michael Bennett out for the season. Scale of 1 to 10, how much does this affect Aaron Murray, I guess, moving forward in this game? As you know, South Carolina has a pretty good defense.
Yeah, I would say it's a 4 simply because he is Georgia's leading receiver, so obviously you never want to lose your leading receiver. It's unfortunate for the young man because he was having a breakout year. Fortunately for Georgia, this is one of the few spots on the roster where the Bulldogs have enough depth to be able to absorb the loss. Of course, Tavares King has been a standout for a number of years. Marlon Brown finally has come into his own and lived up to some of the hype. Chris Conley has been a factor. We've now got Malcolm Mitchell moved back to offense probably full-time for this game. So there are a lot of weapons that are still available. So if it weren't for the depth at wide receiver, I'd say it was a 6 or a 7 or an 8. It's only a 4 because even though he's a major part of the offense, there are a lot more weapons in the arsenal.
Right, and the offense for Georgia has been pretty dynamic thus far, as you know, more than 40 points in all of the Bulldogs games so far, in large part due to Todd Gurley, due to Keith Marshall. South Carolina pretty good against the run, Kyle. How do you see that matchup playing out in this game tonight, that South Carolina defensive front against Georgia's 2 dynamic running backs?
Well, unquestionably, South Carolina has the toughest defensive front that Georgia has faced. By the same token, Georgia has the most explosive offense that South Carolina has faced. So it's an interesting matchup. I would love to see Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall do what they did last week and each have a 100-yard game. I don't think that's going to happen. Fortunately, I don't think that needs to happen. Frankly, if Georgia can break the century mark as a team on the ground, they can put together a running game that I think is at least enough of a threat to buy Aaron Murray the time he's going to need to take advantage of a somewhat suspect South Carolina secondary.
Yeah, and on the flip side of the ball, talking about the rushing defense for the Bulldogs, as you know, there might be a bit of a weakness there for Georgia. People are saying you can run on the Bulldogs about 150 yards per game on average allowed, 9th in the SEC. South Carolina's a team that likes to run the football as well. Why is it that Georgia's having problems with the rushing attack? Is it schemes? Is it personnel? What is the reason for this?
Well, I think last week, which was the one where Georgia got, I think, gashed the most unexpectedly by a team that really wasn't good at running the football in Tennessee, is because Georgia was respecting Tyler Bray and the Tennessee receiving corps, and they had the safeties playing very, very deep. Obviously, that's not going to be the case tonight. Georgia respects Marcus Lattimore. They better respect Marcus Lattimore after what he's done to them the last 2 years. And clearly the focal point of the defense is going to be on slowing him down. You're certainly not going to be able to stop him. And also to respect that zone read, because Connor Shaw, while he may not be able to beat you with his arm, can beat you with his legs, and that's going to have to be the focal point. So I think it's a matter of scheme. I think it's been a matter of individual game plan. Certainly with the guys that Georgia has in the middle, particularly with Alec Ogletree back from suspension, Georgia should be significantly better against the run. Of course, they've now got all of the starters back for the second week in a row, hopefully worked out some communication issues from from last week, and are finally ready to come out there and put together a complete game. The other thing I'd point out is this defense has been sort of off again, on again this year. Didn't look particularly good in the opener against Buffalo, came back strong against Mizzou. Did not look particularly good in the next game against Florida Atlantic, played lights out against Vanderbilt. Didn't look particularly good against Tennessee. So it's time for them to put together a really good game again, just in time for South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, we talk about the rushing attack for South Carolina. We talk about the passing attack and the rushing attack for the Georgia Bulldogs. What are we missing, Kyle? What are we missing in terms of matchups here that maybe people watching at home, maybe they got the iPad on the lap, they're settling in, watching the night game. What else should they pay attention to?
Definitely special teams. South Carolina's got a pretty solid return game. Georgia has had some issues on both kickoff and punt returns, the return men making bad decisions. Also, frankly, shanked a couple of extra points along the way, so that that extra point really could make a difference in a tight ball game. I think when you look at this, field position and turnovers are going to be so critical because it's so likely that this is going to come down to a final drive, so field position matters a great deal. You don't want to give the other guy a short field, and you certainly don't want to give up a big return or, frankly, mess something up in the kicking game where, heaven forbid, you score what could be the go-ahead touchdown and then miss the extra point and leave the game tied.
All right. Well, as you know, the SEC East got a bit of good news, right? Florida wins over LSU. That's a big one. The SEC East, I think, has to look at that game and think, all right, maybe we stand a chance against the West, which really wasn't the case last season. So, as we head into this game tonight, what is your prediction?
I think it's going to come down to the wire. It seems these games always do. I think you're going to see a little bit more scoring than we're used to when these two teams hook up in Columbia. I think at the end of the day, Georgia's going to be able to put together just enough offense to win. I predict 27-24. Again, I'd like to think that's 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals. More likely, 4 touchdowns and a missed extra point.
4 touchdowns and a missed extra point. All right, we're going to hold you to that. Kyle King, again, dogsports.com. Appreciate you stopping by. Now, by all means, go enjoy the game.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, well, our very own Dan Rubenstein, my co-host, not here. He did leave us a present. One other game kicking off in just a few minutes. If it hasn't already, West Virginia on the road. Of course, a huge win last week, and by huge, we mean 70 points, 133 total points in that game against Baylor. Going to be a different story, maybe, in this one tonight against the Texas Longhorns. Dan left us a present, left us a video in his absence. Danny, take it away.
If you're watching this, something horrible has happened to me.
Bummer, dude.
Or I'm being forced to watch Texas football in person, which is also kind of a
Bummer, dude.
So, from the great beyond, I'd like to give you the keys to this game as I see it. For West Virginia, it's going to be a matter of how well can they get to the edge with Tavon Austin. Those little touch passes we've seen could be crucial in testing the Texas linebacking core and the secondary, which has been bad at tackling in the open field. On the Texas side of things, how much can they control the clock with that running game, with Malcolm Brown, the starter, out with the ankle injury that's been nagging him? It's a matter of Joe Bergeron and Jonathan Gray controlling the ball, the offensive line being consistent and getting a push against that not all that good West Virginia defense, but still important to prevent this from becoming an all-out track meet, because as we've seen with Geno Smith, the more you have to pull a safety into the box to protect against some of the crossing routes and edge plays, he's going to find the islands. The man is Marco Polo. So how much can Texas control that? How much can the Texas secondary keep West Virginia in front of it? Easier said than done. This is going to be enormous for the Mountaineers as they look to go on the road and win their first Big 12 game. Again, if something horrible has happened to me.
Bummer, dude.
All right, that touching montage again from Dan Rubenstein. Maybe he's watching somewhere in Austin, Texas, in all likelihood. Probably just enjoying the start of, again, West Virginia on the road against Texas. He did not make his pick there, though, which I got to say, that's sort of disappointing. I think he likes Texas. I do as well. West Virginia has not seen a defense this good. So put me on record. Let's go with Texas here. Another game kicking off tonight. My very own Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I say very own even though I didn't graduate from Notre Dame. You all know I'm a Notre Dame fan at this point. And this is sort of a big one. They call it the Shamrock Series. And Notre Dame's going to be wearing some goofy uniforms that I'm sure people are going to hate, except apparently for the 18-year-old kids who are out there maybe thinking about going to Notre Dame. We'll see if it has any bearing on the outcome of this game. And here to help me break down just that from 1 foot down, pleased to welcome back to the Solid Verbal Live. He was on a few weeks breaking down the Michigan game. His name is Eric Murtaugh. Do we have Eric on the phone?
How you doing?
All right, Eric Murtaugh on the phone from 1 foot down. How are you? Are you ready for this game tonight?
I am.
All right,
Can't wait.
So now what's up with Tommy Rees? Because I'm seeing tweets come through here, and I got to be honest with you, Eric. I don't like what I'm seeing. Why is Tommy Rees in? And I guess what was your emotional response to hearing that Tommy Rees is going to be the starting quarterback tonight?
Well, first of all, there have been some rumors going around that Golson had missed a team meeting yesterday, and I think that turned out to be true. As far as my emotions, it's tough. It's a tough situation. You don't want to see the juggling quarterbacks and all that stuff that Kelly has seemed to be doing, but I think I kind of have faith in a little bit of faith in Rees right now. I think he knows the offense a little bit better, and we'll probably see Golson come in pretty quickly anyway, so I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I noticed how you hedged a little bit there. You have a little bit of confidence in. I mean, do you think he's turned a corner? He has been effective in spots, but I keep going back to the spring game when you read everything coming out of South Bend, and some of the beat writers were like, listen, he's doing the same things he's always done. It doesn't seem like Tommy Rees has improved a whole lot. We've seen him come in sort of as this relief pitcher, and Brian Kelly's used him pretty effectively thus far. Do you think he's turned any corner? Is this sort of a new page in the Tommy Rees career as a Notre Dame quarterback?
I think it's too early to tell. He hasn't played enough this year to really say either way. Again, I don't expect him to play the whole game today or even play a lot, but I think he just knows the offense so well that I think we'll be just as good with him right now in this game tonight with Rees at quarterback. So, going into the future, I think it'd be a bigger problem. But for tonight, I don't think it's a huge issue.
Okay, and I'm guessing you saw the Michigan State score come across the wire a little early. They struggled mightily with, I think we've lost Eric here momentarily. What I was getting at, which we can talk with Eric about in just a little bit, Michigan State, a team that Notre Dame went to East Lansing and beat. And it was a huge game. We talked about it on this show at great length. Michigan State has struggled mightily now in a few games following up the Notre Dame game. And so I'm starting to wonder, is this a bit of a mirage that Notre Dame went out, beat Michigan State? People made a big deal of it. Notre Dame catapults in the rankings, but is Michigan State for real? Is Michigan State for real? That's something we need to find out, and I think it'll be a bellwether for us as we try to figure out just how good Notre Dame is. So that'll be an interesting. Do we have Eric back yet? Okay, we're working on getting Eric back here. Another thing in this game that we could talk about with Eric, Miami likes to throw the football, all right? And I realize that Notre Dame is about a 2-touchdown favorite here, but Miami averages well over 300 passing yards per game. We haven't seen this from any team that Notre Dame's played thus far. Thus far, it's all these teams who like to complement the run with the pass. This is going to be a different kind of football game, mainly because Miami has that quick strike offense. Stephen Morris last week threw for a ton of yards, and I don't think Notre Dame's seen anyone yet who's been able to do that on the secondary, which, let's face it, that is the weakness for this defense. Quite honestly, they need to prove that they can stop a legit passing offense before I think any of us can really christen them as being this national title contender. For as weird as it feels to say, Notre Dame could be just that if they can prove that they can A, score points, and B, stop a team that can legitimately throw the football. So we shall see here. I guess we're still without Eric. We can talk a little bit more about this game in just a little bit. Going back to what we said a little bit earlier, I want to get back to this game between West Virginia and Texas because Dan is, of course, down there. And it's one that I think has certainly, according to the emails that we've seen come through on the Solid Verbal, the West Virginia-Texas game has been pretty polarizing because, you see the offense on the West Virginia side of things, and you figure, how does that pair up with the other teams in the Big 12? How does that pair up with a Texas defense that obviously gave up a lot of points last week. I'm interested to see what happens in that game. We have Eric back now, again from 1 Foot Down. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Mr. Murtaugh, are you back with us?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thanks for hopping on with us again. When we departed, I was bringing up Michigan State. And Michigan State had a game earlier today against Indiana. They struggled mightily, and they were lucky to win that game. Now, just a few weeks ago, Michigan State, Notre Dame, that was the biggest thing since sliced bread. So how do you now handicap how good Notre Dame is after seeing how bad Michigan State may actually be?
Well, again, I hate to be saying the same things. I think it's a little too early to tell. You never know in college football what's going to happen over the course of a whole season. Right now, it looks like Michigan State's offense isn't close to being good, but I still think their defense is pretty strong, even though their struggles today with what's probably going to be a pretty poor Indiana team. But like I said, you can never tell. It looks like Michigan had a pretty good game today against Purdue, and we all thought that Purdue was going to be pretty good this year. So
sure,
you never know.
Okay. Well, one of the concerns, I think, if you're a Notre Dame fan, if you're trying to figure out how this game ends up, Miami could throw the football. Right, when we got disconnected, I was telling the fine folks about how Miami likes to throw the football. They throw for well over 300 passing yards per game in their first couple games here this season. Have you seen any clues from the Notre Dame secondary thus far? Any clues as to how they might handle a more prolific passing attack and how effective they could be? Because, again, we haven't seen a whole lot of data, but I think we've seen dribbles and drabs about how this team might perform on a stage like this when they've got a more developed passing attack on the other side of them.
That's right. I think we know that defensive coordinator Bob Diaco likes to play a little bit soft coverage and sit back and hopefully make the other team make a mistake. But I like to see the safeties playing back today, force Miami to complete a lot more shorter passes and really guard against those big pass plays that Miami seems to live off of. I was just looking at some stats earlier. They're tied for first in the country with 13 plays of 40 yards or more, so I'm sure even more than ever, Diaco is going to try to sit back and have those corners play off the wide receivers and make sure that Miami doesn't beat them over the top, because I think once you take away Miami's long passing game, they're going to have a hard time moving the ball tonight.
All right. We know about the secondary. We know that that's going to be a unit for Notre Dame that's going to be tested this evening. What else is there? What else are we missing here? Is there another key in this game that people should be paying attention to tonight?
Well, I think the major key as far as when Notre Dame's on defense is going to be how they do against the Miami offensive line. I think most people are predicting that Notre Dame's going to do pretty well, but there seems to be an improved Miami offensive line. If they're not great, they should be pretty decent. I think if they can protect Morris and keep him upright for most of the game, their offense is going to move the ball. But if Notre Dame has been like they've been through the first 4 games, if they're getting 3-4 sacks and getting lots of pressure, not only from the defensive line but from the linebackers as well, I think it's going to be a tough game for Miami.
All right, before we get you out of here, give me your prediction tonight again, Notre Dame versus Miami. It's the Shamrock Series. I know you're excited to see the uniform. So am I. What's your prediction?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit closer than most people think. I know a lot of people think the weather is going to really affect Miami, and their defense has been really bad this year. But I think Notre Dame's going to win by about 10 or 11 points. I think it'll be pretty close, but they'll pull away in the second half. And I think their running game's going to get back on track tonight with hopefully 200 yards or more tonight.
All right, again, Eric Murtaugh from 1 Foot Down. Enjoy the game tonight, and thanks for hopping on with me for a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Ty.
All right, there you have it. We'll get to a few of the other night games maybe in just a little bit when we have another guest host via the Skypes. We'll maybe go through Nebraska, Ohio State, and Florida State, NC State, and maybe even Washington, Oregon. We'll see how much time we have. Big thanks to those guys for hopping on with me, making it easy previewing some of these big games that are going to be on your TV dials a little bit later on. They might be on already, depending where you're at. Okay, with that said, one game just wrapped up, and it was quite a big one. We talked about it with Kyle King briefly. Here to help me talk more about it, you know him well. From EDSBS, he is an icon here as SB Nation things go. Pleased to welcome to the Solid Verbal Live, Mr. Spencer Hall. Spencer, can you hear me, and how are you?
I'm good. I certainly hope you can hear me. sorry for being in the backyard, but when you have a 2.5-year-old in the house, this is where you can do it on a Saturday.
It looks like you're at Forrest Gump's house in Greenbow, Alabama.
I basically am. Believe it or not, this is downtown Atlanta. When people ask you what it actually looks like, it looks like this.
Okay, so I envision you having the game projected on the side of your house down there in Atlanta. But what was your watching situation, and how were you able to react to that situation without scaring your small children?
I watched most of it alone.
Okay.
I stayed calm. It's very easy, by the way, calm during a football game when you remember that small children are watching you as an example of human behavior. You don't want to be that guy. So I managed to keep a lid on it until Mike Gillislee scored his second TD, and at that point I verbalized. In a positive manner, though, and without using too many profanities. So overall, a very stable watching experience. Maturity is slow coming, but it's pleasant to enjoy nonetheless.
All right, so give me the abridged version, because we were doing all sorts of things here around the studio. Had it on in the background while we were trying to get set up tonight. Give me the abridged version here in maybe 30 seconds or less. What went down in this game that was, I guess, ultimately handing it to Florida and giving them the 8-point victory?
The second half. The second half was what happened. And there was one moment in the game, one pivotal moment when LSU really could have counterpunched, and that was when Zach Mettenberger completed a deep pass to Odell Beckham, and it was ruled a fumble, which rightfully so. Matt Elam stripped it before ODB's shin hit the ground. And after that, it was all useless for LSU. They really didn't pose a threat after that. And Florida managed to run the ball in the second half like they've done every single game this year after the break.
Yeah, and you mentioned the rushing attack, and this is something I know that we discussed on our live show, or not our live show, our pre-recorded show earlier this week, that rushing attack of LSU versus Florida's defensive line. Now, there's no doubt that the Florida defensive front that LSU saw today was clearly the best it had seen all season. But we heard so much headed into this season about the 4 dynamic running backs that LSU has and how they were going to rely on that rushing attack to maybe put Zach Mettenberger in a position to make a few key passes. That rushing attack never got off the ground here. They like to rush the ball 64% of the time, Spencer. They could not get off the ground in this game. How was Florida able to contain that attack?
They were able to contain that attack with the collaboration of the LSU offensive staff, because the LSU offensive staff, they came out throwing. They came out depending on Zach Mettenberger to win this game. So we do have at least one answer to whether Zach Mettenberger can have an attack built around him, and that answer is no. Odell Beckham had a couple of really bad drops, a couple of critical drops in this game, but on the whole, he was largely ineffective, easily panicked, and useless once he rolled out of the pocket. And Florida did manage to get pressure on him throughout the game.
Yeah, and where does this put Florida now, right? This has been a long time coming for you, Spencer. Will Muschamp got the boys playing well. They seem to progressively improve from week to week. And now you're at a spot, you're still undefeated in the SEC. You just beat LSU. How's your heart, Spencer Hall?
My heart is in fairly good condition. Cautious optimism is a really great dampener for the kind of paranoia and anxiety that can creep up when you're now 5-0. But beating LSU at home, that's nice. Winning 2 games in the SEC on the road, that's nice. But at this point, this is still a very young team. This is still a team whose quarterback had 61 yards passing today, 61 yards. And though he did run for a critical 3rd down late in the game to ice it, it's still a very much a developing product. This is still going to be hopefully a better team at the end of the year than they were coming. So the curve is nice. 5-0 is reason for a lot of optimism. But I've seen really long Octobers before as an SEC fan, particularly as a Florida fan. So 1 week at a time is how I get through this without entering a 12-step program.
Okay, well, you pay attention to things on both a micro and a very macro level on your blog, edsbs.com. I got to ask, what does this mean now for the entire SEC? How does this game help you define where this SEC season goes moving forward? Because for so long, last season, it was Alabama and LSU. Florida beats LSU at home. What does this tell us now, just if we're watching from afar, about the SEC season and where you think it might go from here?
I think this doesn't really tell you anything too new. I don't think this game told you anything surprising. It would have been surprising if Florida had come out and either A, completely flopped, or B, had scored 40 points on LSU. But I think as it stands, LSU still looks very much like the team that struggled against Alabama in the BCS title game last year. Offensively, they remain a mess, even with Zach Mettenberger as the new starter at quarterback. I think Florida, it doesn't look a whole lot different in terms of what they like to do or what they want to do. And it doesn't really change the SEC East just yet, because we're just starting to get the three-way shakeout between Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida for the SEC East crown. So it doesn't change a whole lot, but I do think it does say one thing, and that is Florida, to one extent or another, is, what is the word? Back.
All right. Well, you said it, not me. Spencer Hall, again, calling from the, I don't know, the compound there in beautiful Atlanta.
Yes, the beautiful compound, right, with dogs, landmines, and guns.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your night. Go have a stiff drink and sit on your porch and enjoy the rocking chair, all right?
I'll have several. Thank you.
All right. Again, Spencer Hall from EDSBS.com. Going to talk about some more action that was in just a few minutes here. But, I mean, you look at this Florida team, and it's one that I know I've liked all season. Dan and I both picked Florida to win this game outright. LSU looked flat in 2 consecutive weeks. All right, and you just can't do that in the SEC. One of the biggest problems about this team coming into this game was the fact that they like to fumble the football. They fumbled the ball 11 times headed into this game, had 8 turnovers. You just can't do that in the SEC if you want to win football games. And LSU did it again here today. Spencer mentioned the big fumble on the long pass. You just cannot do that against a fast defense like Florida, and it's going to come back to haunt them. So it'll be interesting to see now where LSU goes moving forward. I mean, we know what to maybe expect from Florida, but LSU is now much more of an enigma than any of us thought headed into the season. So I know on my level and certainly on Dan's level, we're both going to be pretty curious to see where the Tigers go moving forward, especially headed into that game with Alabama. If LSU can't stop Alabama, who can? It might not be until the SEC championship. So it will be interesting to say the absolute very least. All right. We're going to do our best here to break down some of the other games. I want to bring on Jason Kirk, another notable name here from SB Nation. I don't know if we have Jason or if we can get Jason soon, but we are going to break down some of the other action. I've got a full sheet here. There were some games, quite honestly, that at about the time we were set to come on the air, Arizona and Stanford was going to overtime. I think Stanford ended up pulling that one out, 54-48, another one of these shootouts. Clemson, Georgia Tech, I think Clemson started to pull away. Hopefully Jason can give us a little more insight on that front. But I got to say, a lot of games that feature no defense, which is fun to watch on some level, but ultimately you want to see some of these teams play defense before I think we're ready to christen them as really being any good. So Clemson, Georgia Tech was an interesting one to follow. Arizona, Stanford, a very interesting one to follow. Oklahoma goes on the road and gets it done against Texas Tech, a Texas Tech team that was supposed to have a pretty good defense, but ultimately couldn't get the job done here when they faced a much, much better offense. We can get into all of that and more. What's our status with Jason? We got Jason coming soon? I hear crickets. Okay. We'll have Jason on here.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear Jason Kirk. Are you on with me?
Hey.
How are you? Are you with Spencer at the Bubba Gump compound?
Yeah. Actually, nobody in Atlanta has roofs. No, we have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old situation right now, so I also opted for the backyard. Okay. Well, that's good. Now, this is sort of like a Blair Witch situation, as you've got the trees in the back. You're not going to be hunted or anything, are you? Yeah, the sun's gone down that 1 degree. That's that critical 1 degree made the difference. All right. So you watching these afternoon games? What's your impression here of what we saw go down right as the 7 o'clock hour hit? Any lasting impressions from you based on some of the action we saw today? Well, I was watching LSU Florida, and I mean, you just talked to Spencer. Florida is looking mighty impressive. We saw more LSU 2010 than 2011 just there, but Florida's looking very good. That's sort of my main impression from the day so far. All right. Well, I want to run through a few of the other games with you. Arizona-Stanford is one that I was pretty interested in. Now, Stanford came into this one about a 9.5, 10-point favorite. And I'm not sure anyone really had an idea where to place Stanford just based on what we've seen over the first couple weeks. And, of course, the Cardinal lost Andrew Luck.
They lost Andrew Luck. They're sort of in a bit of a rebuilding mode now, and could not score points in a few of these games that I know everyone saw on national television. They come out here, and the question was, can they score with Arizona if the game turns into a track meet? That's something Dan and I mentioned earlier this week. The answer is yes. They put up 54 points. They win by 6, but it takes until overtime in order for them to do this. I guess the question I would ask you, the defense that we saw out of Stanford, you know, the one on the Thursday night game against Washington, was that for real? Or what do we got now here with the Stanford defense?
I would say the Stanford defense is probably still closer to what we thought it was. I mean, Arizona is just going to be a challenge for teams. Like, you know, Rich Rodriguez's scheme has come along faster than I think we thought it would, certainly way faster than it did in Michigan. You know, Matt Scott is that's sort of an ideal weapon for him. You know, Arizona is just a legitimate offense, and they're just going to challenge people. I think that's what we saw today. You know, Stanford's still very good, still a contender in that conference. I think the Pac-12 is just sort of looking like what we usually expect from the ACC. You know, just sort of eating itself.
Yeah, I enjoy the crickets in the background. It's calming, I must say. I can hear it. It's very calming. Thank you.
Got a locust.
It's sort of bringing us all here to a very zen moment. All right, so Stanford goes out. They win this game at home. This is a big win for them. They needed to rebound here. Another team that needed a really big win was the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, Oklahoma, traditionally on the road, has not fared very well. And Landry Jones has had his ups and downs throughout the course of his career. And so far this season has just seemed to have a really hard time finding any sort of sync with the rest of his offense. They go out, they make a statement here against Texas Tech. My question to you, Jason, is Texas Tech. The defense was supposed to be good. Is this just the showing of a superior offense, or was this a showing of a Texas Tech defense that many of us may have overrated?
I would say the latter. I mean, I'm still not sold on Oklahoma, and I wasn't sold on that Texas Tech defense, like considering the schedule they'd played. I'm high on the Big 12, but I do not see either of these teams as ranking in that, you know, the upper portion of the Big 12. I think this is the game you'd expect. You'd expect, you know, Landry Jones to have a good day, not an incredible day, but a good enough day. I think the Oklahoma defense would be the impressive thing here. Holding that attack 271 yards passing. That would be the story of the game for me. The Oklahoma defense showing up probably better than some people expected.
Yeah, and they forced 3 turnovers, too, which is a big deal. They haven't been doing that, and that's been a big part of the reason why it just seems they haven't had that killer instinct. But they go out and win 41-20 in this one. We'll see what they do moving forward. They've got a big one on tap in a few weeks with Notre Dame, who is currently in action. Maybe we can, well, I don't know if we could talk about that later, but we'll see where we go. Also, Clemson. All right, so before we came on the air, people were sending the Solid Verbal Twitter account, at Solid Verbal, by the way, a number of Clemsoning style tweets, right? You know about this whole Clemsoning thing now, right? It's the Clemsoning if they have expectations and then they don't meet those expectations. This was not a Clemsoning. Obviously, they won, but what do we make out of Clemson now? Gave up a lot of points to a Georgia Tech team that has been really up and down, has looked really bad at points this season. Is Clemson up to its 2011 standards, or is this a different team for one reason or another?
Well, I think we've come to see this Georgia Tech team, they tend to score on people and give up points. And Clemson's kind of, for whatever reason, just always had trouble with Paul Johnson, even making the defensive coordinator change. There was definitely a Clemsoning alert. We actually sent one from the SB Nation College account at one point.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, great.
Yeah, just to spread awareness. But, honestly, it's sort of a rivalry game in a way, and with those, you really can't read too much into it. I mean, Clemson did win by a convincing amount. Their defense is still a major concern, but as we can see, they can score on pretty much anybody. Taj Boyd had another great day. Nuke Hopkins, might be as good as Sammy Watkins, really, based on this whole season, really. I think, Clemson, I think we can still pencil them in as the ACC's second best team. I don't know how big of a compliment that is, but I think we can comfortably say that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I'd also say no one plays defense No one plays defense in a game like this. I mean, I think if they weren't over 1,000 total yards, they're pretty darn close. They got to play some defense at some point if they want to go up against the big boys and have better success than maybe they've had in the past.
Yeah, they crossed 1,000, I believe.
Yeah, no, the threshold, they've done it. I'm looking at it here, 599 and 483. So if math serves me, that would be well over 1,000. So all right, Clemson goes out. They win in a big way as well. A few other ones here that I want to go through, and Jason, forgive me, we've got a few graphics here that we might be able to show that you might not see on your side. But I want to talk about Penn State because Penn State is a team, well, we know what happened with Penn State before the start of this season. Penn State won a game today at home over an undefeated Northwestern Wildcat team, 39-28. The graphic on the screen is of Matt McGloin diving into the end zone and then sort of doing the discount double check thing. And I don't know if you saw the play, Jason, but it's one of those deals when McGloin's jumping into the end zone. He looks like that awkward kid on like your 8th grade Little League team who doesn't know how to slide. Right? He tries to slide and somehow he ends up rolling or doing it with 2 feet. And he tried to do this dive head first. It didn't quite work out. Matt McGloin does get the 6 points. At the end of the day, that's really all that matters. And I guess at this point, I don't know. Is Bill O'Brien Coach of the Year if you're voting today?
Yeah, he's got a strong case. I mean, and also, how about Matt McGloin for some sort of Big Ten comeback player of the year kind of thing?
I'm waiting for him to show up on Mel Kiper's big board, quite honestly.
Yeah, he's a top 10 draft pick if
Right.
I've ever seen. I mean, a guy who, I don't think anybody, saw him winning that quarterback competition, let alone proving Bill O'Brien correct by playing pretty well so far. He had a great day today against a team that entered the day 5-0 and, was one of the Big Ten's best postseason hopes, however crazy that feels to say. But, Matt McGloin, he's looking pretty good.
I want to play a game with you. I want to keep the camera on Jason for a second, if we could. I want you to pretend it's 2011, all right? I don't want you to speak. I want to see your reaction here. Matt McGloin just threw the ball 50 times. All right, now reset. It's 2012. Matt McGloin threw the ball 51 times today, completed 35 passes, 281, and 3 total touchdowns. Yeah, that's a look of satisfaction, my friends. That's a good one. Penn State wins this one. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Nittany Lions moving forward. It's a big win for them. Big win, and you read the tweets from people up at State College, and it was the best thing going. The best thing going in quite some time at State College. So hopefully they can keep the winning ways going. Let's move to, speaking of winning ways, Jason, Arkansas, Auburn.
Yeah, not a lot of winning ways there.
We won't play the face game for this one, okay?
Thank you. I can't conjure that level of twisted emotion. It would probably be best if I just ducked down and you could look at the scary trees.
Right. Yeah, no, we have a graphic here, another one, of an Auburn fan. He's wearing jeans. He's sort of got the white tucked-in shirt, and he's got his hands out. Come on! Come on! He's just angry. Have you seen this one? I mean, this is the state of Auburn football, right? This is actually the state of Arkansas football as well. They just came out on top in this one.
Hey, state of Arkansas is feeling pretty good. Got an SEC West win. Arkansas is feeling fine right now. I mean, Arkansas fans, at least they know they're getting a new coach next year. You know what I mean? Auburn fans don't quite have that same promise awaiting them.
Yeah, there's no pot of gold, I guess, at the end of the rainbow. Arkansas wins 24-17. That brings up the question. I hear a lot of people talking about whether or not Gene Chizik should be on the hot seat at all. The guy won a national championship, Jason. Won with Cam Newton, and I know people are going to say, well, he only did it because of Cam Newton, but he still was able to rally the team. He still was able to win that national championship. How do you feel about him being on the hot seat?
I think it feels pretty appropriate. I mean, if you look at his record without Cam Newton, the number, is it like 22-32? I think that's what I saw today. I mean, on the one hand, this just goes to show that Cam Newton was hands down one of the greatest football players at this level ever. And on the other, that's sort of the other reaction there. I mean, what have we seen from this Auburn program over the last 2 years that would, give us any indication it's on the right track other than recruiting, which lots of teams recruit well.
So you're not going to give him a rite of passage? You're not going to give him like a 5-year window or anything because we want to I don't see how you could put him on the hot seat. I'll be honest. I don't. I understand that the results aren't up to snuff after Auburn won a couple of years ago. Maybe fans want more, but you got to give the guy a grace period. He's still trying to rebuild now. He's got 2 new coordinators.
Sure. I mean, maybe you give him a year or two.
Okay.
You know, another season or two. Although I would point out that the coordinators he hired, you know, that's still on him. I would say that Brian Van Gorder, having watched him as a Falcons fan over the last 5 years, you know, and you know, he coached at Georgia before that, and he was excellent there. That's an excellent hire. As for the offense, the jury is very much out. We will, you know, we'll wait to see on that. You made 2 coordinator hires. That's a big change. You buy yourself a year with that, you know, and it feels crazy to say because he did just win a national title. His team was one of the best, you know, of the past decade. He is an incredible recruiter. It feels crazy to say, but things have to change very soon.
Okay. All right, I want to move quickly through 2 other games before we get to the segment everyone waits for every week. That's the Tire Fire of the Week award. Let's talk about UNC, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech. Jason, what has happened to Virginia Tech? I feel like this is a weird alter universe where Virginia Tech is no longer Virginia Tech anymore. What has happened to the Hokies?
Yeah, I mean, we look at Virginia Tech giving up a kickoff return for the first time in almost 20 years, a kickoff return for a touchdown. I believe they gave up more rushing yards to a single back than they have in, like, decades as well. Like, they're just getting out fundamentals.
Out everythinged?
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, they've never really had that, you know, definitive across the board talent advantage. They've just done, you know, the annoying things right. But now they're just getting beaten at everything. And you know, I don't know what to do there. I mean,
they rushed for 37 yards today, Jason.
Yeah, that's not Hokies football. You know, I think we could see more and more calls for an offensive coordinator change there.
Yeah.
That's always been a popular one with Virginia Tech fans. Anytime they're playing, you can pretty much find someone calling for that job. But I mean, really, you know, they put up points today. They just that wasn't the problem today, other than turnovers.
I'd like to take this time to remind people that at one point, Mel Kiper Jr. had Logan Thomas numero uno on his big board, and number 1 overall. That probably will be revised. If it hasn't already, that will be revised moving forward now into the college football offseason and then into the draft preseason. He will not be number 1. This has been a really bad year for Logan Thomas. It's probably not all his fault, but Virginia Tech has had a lot of problems getting in sync as well on offense. All right, so we're running short on time, Jason. I got a few other games here listed on the old rundown sheet, but if it's all right with the folks in the control room, and if it's all right with you, I'm afraid you're going to be attacked by a bear.
Okay.
I want to move to our Tire Fire of the Week because that's really why all the people are watching this late into the broadcast. Can we roll the Tire Fire of the Week clip, please? There it is. We've got the I Love Lucy-ish kind of music. And we've got 3 nominees tonight, Jason. I'm going to read them off to you. I want to see what you think, and then I'll give my ideas as well. We just talked about the Virginia Tech defense gave up 532 yards of total offense today to the North Carolina Tar Heels. Not a good showing. Second, I'm just sort of throwing this one in there. We solicited a number of candidates, a number of nominations on the Twitter. I am going to nominate all football in the state of Utah, Jason. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's pretty legit. I think the entire state has scored about 11 points this year so far, so we'll take that.
And finally, I want to close with this graphic. I think this is going to be the winner, but I'm not sure. We have a listener by the name of Rolls Royce 5, a listener, a viewer. He's been with us since the very beginning of the Solid Verbal. He is an Auburn fan. This was a tweet earlier today. I said, send Tire Fire nominees. He had an arrow. The whole Auburn offense with 3 exclamation points. I would assume that has to be the Tire Fire of the whatever time period victor at this point, Mr. Kirk. I don't know how else you could see it on a day like today. Auburn looked really, really bad.
I mean, I think whoever lost that Auburn-Arkansas game would have to get some sort of an honorary Tire Fire at the very least. Some sort of, you know, they give the Oscar out, not necessarily to the best movie, but to the, you know, the best body of work. And Auburn's tire fire body work has been incredible so far this year offensively.
Well, the joke before this week was that it was sponsored by the Fayetteville National Credit Union. And now we saw what happened against Arkansas. I don't know if we've got a mixed sponsorship type of situation here, but if they could go in on it together, then they can have the glory of the tire fire with them throughout the year.
Yeah, it was what was it? Arkansas like doubled up their takeaways or something like that, and they sacked something like 8 sacks when they entered the game with 7. It was just incredible stuff.
All right, so if I think I hear you correctly, you're going Auburn as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that.
All right, I'm going to go Auburn as well. Congratulations to the Auburn Tigers. You are the tire fire of college football's Week 6. We'll see if anyone can top you this evening, but I have a hard time believing that anyone can. All right, Jason, thank you for stopping on by. Do your best to stay safe out there. I'm still a little worried about you.
Absolutely. I got my torch and shotgun. I should be able to get my way back to the house.
All right. Well, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your night.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay, again, Jason Kirk. You can find him on Shutdown Fullback, the very fine show here on SB Nation as well. He and Spencer will break down all the action in their own twisted way. A lot of fun. Do check out, again, the Shutdown Fullback. Okay. I think that does it for us tonight. A big thanks to all of our guests this evening who stopped on by, and of course everyone here at SB Nation Studios for making it all possible. Had a good time. Hopefully Dan can be back with me next week and talk a little bit more about his experience down there in beautiful Austin, Texas. We hope nothing bad has happened to him and that he is enjoying the football game, as are so many others on this evening. Again, @SolidVerbal is our Twitter address. 206-338-1784. Give us a call. Let us know what you think while you're watching the games tonight. In the meantime, for myself, Ty, again, we're in beautiful Midtown Manhattan. Thanks for tuning in and spending some time with us on your Saturday night. Do enjoy the rest of it. Thanks again. Stay solid.